Hello and welcome to part 3 of this video series. In this part of this tutorials we're going to be taking a look at basic outdoor portaling, and before we get going here we're going to take a quick look at the design of this place and talk a little bit more about how we can add our structural brushes to divide this area up. And the reason we want to do that is because at this moment, if we just threw in just a few basic portals without any more structural brushes, they would be relatively ineffective when the player is standing in this outside area. From wherever we're standing in this area, we could probably see into every cell we make out here. So the only time they'll be effective is if we're standing in these buildings. So we need to add some structural brushes into this, so we can break this area up. And I've decided to just add in a couple of simple garden walls, and if I just filter out models now, we can get a clearer look at what that's done to this space. That's essentially split it into 3 different areas, and we're going to keep this basic for now. We could have added some quite complex porcelain into this without having to add structural brushes, but we'll leave that for another tutorial. So we're ready to take a look at creating our first outdoor portal. We're going to concentrate in this area to start with, so let's just filter out everything we don't need and anything that won't interfere with our creation of this portal cell. That means terrain, that means curve patches, entities, lights, models, and detail brushes. Everything else we have left now is structural brushes. So what have we got here? Let's take a concentrated look in this area. If I just select all the brushes that make up this area, we can use these brushes to create our first outdoor portal. So with these selected, I'm just going to hide everything we're not using at the moment, just to make it clearer for us, and we're going to turn this area into our portal cell. And to do this, just like with the rooms and with the buildings, we need to create a sealed environment, and at the moment there's absolutely no way we can create a sealed environment, so we have to build a substructure of structural brushes that will allow us to create our sealed environment and ultimately allow us to create our portal cells. And like I've already mentioned, to do this we need to create a substructure that won't be seen in game, but it will just allow us to create this portal cell. So to do that we need to create a whole bunch of structural brushes, and in this case we're just going to use some Cult structural brushes to start creating our base. And I'm just going to draw this brush out here that's perfectly in line with this structural brush, and basically all I'm doing is tracing the outline of our structural brushes with more structural brushes and creating our sealed environment. So I'm just going to continue to do this quickly. I'm just going to seal this environment first only. So again, just trace all the structural brushes that you're using to create this cell. Just make sure it's just traced around the bottom side of this with structural brushes. And when we've completed this, we'll also be drawing in a base, almost acting like our floor was for our other portaling in buildings. So we're going to draw out a brush that covers the almost the entire area, and bring that down so it acts as our floor. Fill in this last piece with another brush, and we're done. Our substructure is complete, and we can now go ahead and create our first outdoor portal. Since we're going to be making it in this area, the same as we did with our buildings, we need to fill in the gaps to create our sealed environment, right? So in this case, obviously, we need to fill in these doorways, and we also need to fill in the area that would otherwise be our roof or ceiling or whatever else we've been using to portal our buildings. And in this case, rather than adding a structural brush, which we can't do, obviously, we're just going to use our portal brushes. That will create our sealed environment and also create our first outdoor portal. So the first thing we need to do is bring up our portal textures, and we just need the portal node draw texture to start with, and I'm going to fill in this doorway really quick. And again, we just need to make sure that all our brushes are aligned and there's no gaps. Same as with the portaling of the buildings. Let's get this doorway, and we're just going to make sure that it's all nicely lined up. So that's our first couple of brushes in place, and now, like I mentioned, we're going to use our portal brushes to finish this cell, and we need to make a roof structure using our portal brushes. So to do that, with your portal node draw texture applied, just draw in a brush and line it up with our structural brushes here. In this case, we're using our outer garden walls. Now we need to decide the height. I'm going to make this portal as high as it will go, but remember, if we left one face of this portal brush exposed like this, for example, the portal will be no good. So each side of these brushes has to be flush against the structural brush. So let's just pull it down. The thickness of this grid wise, I tend to do all my portal brushes in a grid 8, but it really maybe it matters, maybe it doesn't. I don't think it does too much, but I personally wouldn't go below a grid 4 when creating your own personal portal brushes. So we've got a bit of an issue here. We need to portal around this structural brush, so I'm just going to line this brush up with this edge, and all I'm going to do, deselect and draw another brush in just to fill in that gap, because again we need to have this touching on all 4 sides of this brush, and that's either against a structural brush or another portal brush. That's perfectly fine, that's perfectly acceptable. It won't have any effect on the creation of this portal cell. So with that brush in place, we can now see we have a sealed environment. So we need to texture the faces of these brushes with the crucial portal texture. So again, as I mentioned in the previous vid, when we're portaling outside and portaling buildings, we should always texture the outside facing faces of these portal brushes. And with that done, we have now completed our first outdoor portal. Yay! So as always, once we feel we've completed a portal cell, it's just worth doing a quick test compile. So let's find our map. There it is there. So let's do a test compile of the BSP. Fingers crossed I'm doing this live. Looks good so far. Yep, all good. We've just created our first outdoor portal. No errors, so we're good to go. Let's move on now and do another one. Press Shift H to bring everything we hid back, and as we can see now, if we want to portal this area, which we will, then we need to create the same type of substructure as we did over here. So let's bring back our CoD texture and make some more brushes. So in this case, we're just going to trace the outside line of this brush, and we're going to carry on doing that along the entire front edge of this building. Again, we're just trying to create our sealed environment, so just trace the outline of our structural brushes. And once you're complete with these brushes, make sure there's no gaps, and we're ready to create our portal cell. So just deselect there. Again, because we've already portaled our buildings and we've portaled this side, we only need to create a portal brush kind of like this, the roof over here, so to speak. So again, we're just going to draw out our portal node draw brush. We're going to line it up with the structural brushes, and again, when portaling around these buildings, just line it up with the structural brush, make sure there's no gaps, and just fill this area in. And that's it. We can now texture the outward facing brush sides here, so let's do that. Biggity bam, we've got ourselves our second outdoor portal. So again, we think we've done it right, so let's save, test and compile, and see what we've got. Again, I'm doing this live, hopefully everything's good. Yep, that seems alright to me. So that's our second portal created, and of course you just go on and complete this third one, filling in the gaps and creating your portal roof. And with that cell complete, we can do our final test compile and just see if all our portals are working correctly. So let's just do that nice and quick now. Make sure you save before you do it, of course. Believe me, it's an easy mistake. So yeah, just let that go through to completion, come back through and check for errors. Nope, that's come back clean. So all our portals are working correctly within this map now. And we've fully 100% portaled this area. And we can now take a quick look in game and just see exactly what effect it's had on our map.